Thanks for joining Try 5 Talk. Your host, Daniel, Craig, and Joey.
You know what, everybody? My mic was just muted here, so bear with me a second here. We have with us Larry Larson, the first over 200, the first in the sixes, and he has won Drag Week over 5 times in a row. Larry Larson, thanks for joining us. How are you tonight?
Good.
Thanks for joining us.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate.
And he forgot to introduce us. I'm Craig from Minnesota, and down below, you're looking at Joe from Texas.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to leave you guys out. I apologize.
Every once in a while, we have a technical glitch, and we'll get through it. It's all right. It's what we do.
Yeah,
I'm just happy to have Larry
happens.
Larson on. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Hey, I remember to hit record this time.
Oh,
Perfect.
yes, please record this one.
So-
but I got to know, Mr. Larson, what kind of got you into motorsports in the first place? Like, could you kind of take us through the early years and kind of your evolution into like getting to winning all those drag weeks, all those fast passes? Like, what brought you there?
I grew up out in western Kansas where there was really nothing, and I mean literally nothing out there. But was into cars from the time I could drive, basically. Raced motocross in the '80s. First time I ever went to a drag strip was, I don't know, I was probably 19 or 20, and went to Wichita for the first time, and a couple super stock cars there. That kind of got me hooked on that deal. But just I had a '69 Camaro big block 4-speed car that I had after I got out of high school and ran it for a while, and then like I said, I raced motocross pretty hot and heavy through the '80s, and bought my Chevy 2 in '88, I guess. January, about this time in '88, and that's what kind of started everything. I built it as something, it was a back half car originally, and I just put it together with a carbureted big block and a Doug Nash 5-speed.
Ooh, okay, all right. That's perfect.
Yeah, so I'd always been a clutch guy, and everything I had 3 pedals in it. So put it together and ran it like that for a while. I mean, I've got some video somewhere of that thing out in Great Bend, Kansas, dialed on an 1180.
Hey,
so
that's all right.
Yeah, it just kind of escalated from there. I mean, I drove it and played with it. It got a little faster, of course, like everything else does. And then in '92, I guess it was, went to a Super Chevy show in Topeka and talked to some guys down there that had just started a shop in Topeka. They called me.
Is that when the car?
I wanted to go to work.
Is that when the car had that pink paint job on it?
The car was painted pink in '89, '90, and kind of humorous because the guy that painted it, buddy of mine, he kept asking me what color I was going to paint it. I kept telling him, and he's like, "I'm not painting that color." And finally got down where, I mean, it was ready to. It was time to go buy paint. He's like, "Seriously, what color are we painting?" I'm like, "I told you 40 times what color we're painting it." And so he shot it, but under protest, I think.
Okay, so he didn't want the pink on it then.
No, he was not about the pink.
Okay.
The pink deal was either a love or a hate deal. There was no in between on that.
Right,
Larry, when it comes to obviously starting the race career and getting interested in motorsports, what did you do for a career or a job back then to start paying for your motorsport hobby?
I was a diesel mechanic back through the '80s, from like '80. '81 through '92, and then, like I said, in '92, I went to work for those guys at Topeka, started building drag race cars, and so been doing that, well, I guess 30 years now, or almost 29 years, something like that.
Damn.
When you say you were
I don't
building,
want to say that's a long time, but that's kind of what it takes to get. That's kind of what it takes to get to the level where you're at, right? Is a lot of time and effort.
Well, it's just, yeah, it's been a long time. It doesn't seem like that long until you stop and think about, or for me anyway, until I stop and think about it, it's like, gosh darn, it's a long time. I've been on my own or had my own place since '97, so almost 25 years of doing it all, myself. So, but it just doesn't, like I said, it doesn't seem that long.
Well, because it seems like yesterday. I mean, and it has been exactly 30 years ago that right now I was in my freshman year of college playing football and chasing girls, and I can close my eyes and still see every one of those being just like yesterday, for sure. Absolutely.
so now you said
I built that car way back then and built it to just go drive and have fun with it, and that's what I did.
Now, were you married at the time, or just boyfriend, or getting girlfriend out there at that time, or what?
Yeah, I was married up until, I guess about the time I started building cars. Got divorced.
That's was it the car or the girl? Was it the car or the girl, or was it just not the right mixture?
That would be the latter.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we'll stay off that subject. I don't need to hammer you on.
I do want to know though. You said you were kind of building these cars up. Could you tell us a little bit about your build philosophy and maybe kind of who inspired you or who you learned to build cars from?
When I started working for those guys over there, both of those guys worked for Jerry Haas, so they did nice work. But back then, Bickle built. He was an Austin dealer. Basically built kit cars back then. Back in '93, I think he built Jimmy Yates's first Firebird for Pro Stock, and it was nothing. As bad as it sounds, it was nothing killer nice like he does now. His stuff is beautiful now. But back then, it wasn't anything great. Haas's stuff was nice, and the top of the line deal was Don Ness. So you look at a lot of Don's cars, and they were just a step above everybody else, just the fit and the finish and everything about them. So me, that's my personality. I want to build something that is better, nicer, easier to work on, everything else than what everybody else's stuff is, and that's what we strive for.
So then striving for the best product that you can put out there.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting point, because some of the things we've noticed on your cars, it's just those very tiny details, like hidden Zeus fasteners, and your windows look almost like they're actual glass windows in some of these race cars. Just that extra detail. Is that something that you kind of brought to the table as you progressed, or is that something that you kind of started out with? This is how I want to build a car.
No, everything. People will ask me, what's the nicest car you ever built, and I always tell them, I said, hopefully the last one. As far as I'm concerned, if you don't learn from every build and try and make the next one better, then you're not going to get any better. So there's things that you pick up from. And everybody's the same way. If you look at somebody else's car, you might look at something and say, man, this is really pretty cool, but if I did this, this, and this, it'd be even nicer. So you incorporate some things that maybe you see on somebody else's stuff. And then we've done some stuff over the years that I've never seen anybody else do. So it's just thinking outside the box, I guess. I helped a friend of mine through the late 80s and early 2000s with an alcohol funny car. And the door car stuff didn't really cross over to the funny car, dragster stuff, whatever, but I didn't let that bother me. I looked at some of the stuff they did and was like, well, that's pretty cool. We could incorporate it into a door car. And so just like I said, just trying to think outside the box and make stuff easy to work on. That's the other thing I tell everybody. I'm lazy, so I don't want to I don't want stuff that's any harder to work on than it has to be. You get down to in between rounds and you've had trouble with something, had something apart, and they're calling for you to be up in the lanes. The last thing you need is having to have a nut on something that you didn't have to have and drop it on the ground and trying to pick it up. I mean, just little stuff like that just drives me crazy.
So build it to be worked on, and I would say the KISS philosophy: keep it simple, stupid.
Pretty much. I mean, that's the one thing I see on a lot of these other cars that I look at that other people build. That it might have really nice paint or really nice whatever. It might be a beautiful car and have killer parts on it. But I stand back and look at it, I'm like, how the hell do you work on that? Or how do you get the transmission out of it? Or why would you do that? And most of it is because whoever built it doesn't go to the racetrack and doesn't work on them. They're fabricators, not racers.
Yeah.
Now, you kind of touched on something like, how do you work on that when it's built a certain way? And Joe here just basically did some fabrication on your cross member for his 55 Chevy. So he's putting an LS in, so you don't have to take the motor out of the car to change the oil pan. Am I right, Joe?
Yeah. I did a couple things, and I really like Larry's philosophy on that. My engine fit fine, but one thing that myself and some other people noticed on our cars were things get really tight when you start to swap them in on these Tri-5s. So I went in and I fabbed in an enlarged transmission tunnel because I wanted to be able to get the bolts, clear the dowel pins with the engine in the car. I want to be able to turn, if I need to turn a transmission, I want to be able to do that like it was in a bare chassis. And same thing with notching a cross member or cutting it out. We have the pro stock rules. Got to use stock front frame rails, but just little things like that. So I think that's something that a lot of us kind of picked up on your philosophy, Larry, without actually you coming out and saying it was, these cars were designed and built by people that actually raced them. And I think that's a lot of what we respect about your builds is that they're serviceable and they look good at the same time. It's not just some engineer. There's form and function in them.
Well, where Joe is going also is the fact that our other co-host, Joey Truelove, he's got a 56 hardtop Bel Air twin turbo LS that he's just the first starts of, he's starting to test run and race, and I don't know his specs. That's Joey. Beautiful car, but he just did a wheelie, dented his oil pan, $600 oil pan. He has to pull the complete motor out to put a new oil pan in, and that little notch of the cross member that Joe here did would have saved him a lot of time and effort. And so it's that kind of stuff that is what you're talking about, I think.
Well, and I look at it as because doing the street strip stuff, which we built some 800-inch pro stock cars. We built some pro mod cars back in the 90s, 2000s, even 10 years ago. But in the last 10 years, let's just say, a lot of our builds have switched over to 5, 6, 7 second pro street or street strip cars. So when you do that, it gets even more complicated because now you're trying to take and everything's a compromise because you're trying to compromise something that you can race and something you can drive and something that you need to service. So that being said, once again, it's a little compromise. So I would look at what you're talking about is how often am I going to have the oil pan off of that thing, or how often am I going to have to service this? Well, if it's only going to be once a year, no big deal. If it's going to be once a month, yeah, that turns into an issue.
Right. Most definitely. Right. So now, out of curiosity, throughout all this, as you've been coming through the years and everything, what have you found, whether it be a person, a project, or how to make something fit or whatever, what has been your biggest adversary, throughout the years?
As far as the biggest problem, you mean?
Yeah, biggest problem, like I says, whether it's, on on builds or, whether it's,
money.
What has been the biggest issue that you've ever had to run into to try and figure out how to fix or how to work around?
Nothing is crazy sticks out, really, really nuts, but probably the one car that we had the most time in was Tom McGilton's 2013 ZL1. Mm-hmm. And that thing, just until you can really see the car and get a good look at it, you can't even relate to it. And you can't even, once you're looking at it, you still don't really understand it until you look underneath it and see everything. Because that car, he brought it to me when it had 36 miles on it. And
Right.
we took it apart completely down to basically a body in white, cut it up, and put everything back together. I mean, the A-pillars and the windshield bar the A-pillars are tucked up into the headliner. You can't even see them. They're up in there. So they fit different, all that. But by the time this thing was done, when we got done, the cruise control didn't work, the remote start didn't work, and it doesn't have power brakes. Other than that, everything on that car, from the heads-up display, the Bluetooth, the heated seats, the key fob for the trunk, everything on that car works. So what we ran into electrical-wise was, I won't say a nightmare, but I couldn't even tell you how many hours I had on that thing trying to figure out the wiring to make the aftermarket ignition, let's just say. I had to leave the factory ECU in it, even though it does nothing. I had to leave the factory ECU in the car and have another box built to tell the factory ECU that the engine was running. And once it knew it was running, then all the factory gauges worked and everything else. But so a lot of that was a lot of hours trying to figure all that stuff out.
Okay, cool.
That car, by the way, is, I don't know if any of you out there have seen that car, but look up that Camaro. It still looks like it has 36 miles on it. That thing is amazing. I'm going to look it up after this again, because that car blows my mind every time.
Yeah.
I was just I just was watching a video earlier, Larry, trying to catch up on some information. Cause like I said, I enjoy watching the shows and stuff. And,
Sure.
and I'm not, but I'm not big into all the stats and facts. I just like to see people go head to head and have fun. But your caddy, I was watching, you did a walk around video. I think I saw it on YouTube. Said, hey, we might as well do a walk around video. And what I find amazing is, like, honestly, if that was parked in front of the drugstore and you didn't notice the fat tires right away, you wouldn't think anything except what a beautiful blue, and I'd keep walking. And then when you pop that whole front end off and realize what it really is, the fact that you made that, I mean, I know the whole thing's a shell or whatever, but
Sure.
It didn't look in that whole, everything I've looked at today on it, it's like, if it's parked in front of the drugstore, besides from the beautiful blue, cool, not a big deal. But until all of a sudden that front end comes off and you realize how well fit everything is underneath that hood and the way you've got it looked, it's like what I guess you call the sleeper in the old days. It's a sleeper, but it's not. But it just fits so perfect. And honestly, because I know in the video you said you didn't really like the body style right away, and or something along that lines. But it's badass.
Thank you.
So Larry, remind me again, where's your shop located?
I'm just outside Kansas City, just east of Kansas City, about 30 miles.
Cool. And so, you're running with fastest in America on Team Texas, right?
I went and ran with those guys. Robin Roberts and I were both supposed to go run with the Texas guys, with Mike and Finney and those guys. Robin ended up having some mechanical difficulties with his deal and never could get away. So I went out and ran with him, and we tested. I was real happy how things went in testing, but then we got out on the road, and the road was better on the starting line than what I anticipated, and got me in trouble on that one. So it was a one and done, and take my wounded tail to the house.
You talk about the starting line, and when I first, I'm going to say it again, started watching Street Outlaws. I come from the country, northern Minnesota. You can race F-150s with a 300 600, don't matter, just go have fun. But when I've learned that you could put the laptop on top of a car and dial in the torque, the horsepower, and all the tuning for the track speed, it took me about 6 episodes to go, what the hell are they doing? If you got 1,500 horsepower, you run it, but I didn't realize I didn't realize that aspect of racing and what that does for track conditions, tire size, and all that. I find that just fascinating. And I'm light years behind Joe and Daniel here that have been on the track, you know. And it's just like, I find that fascinating that someone goes, hey, I got 4,000 horsepower, but I'm only going to use 1,200 today because of the track conditions and this and that. And it's pretty interesting stuff.
Absolutely, and to be able to try and read the road, read the track. We went to Mega Cash Days a year and a half ago now, I guess, up in Nebraska, and ran up there, and I know I was a little bit of the running joke because they thought, oh, these, you know, this guy's never run on the street, he's going to flounder, and Robin and I were running together up there, and same thing, you know, that they thought both of us weren't going to do anything. Well, we went out and found somewhere to test, and the good thing with us running together, we weren't afraid to start changing and moving weight and changing gear ratios and just doing a bunch of stuff. And when we finally came out and ran the first night, I think he and I were probably the two fastest cars there, or at least probably two of the fastest three. And I think it kind of caught everybody off guard just because they thought, you know, that hey, these track racers aren't going to do any good. And I told the one guy, I thought, if you want to race down the road ditch, we'll get down the road ditch in the ditch and race. I don't care. I said, I'm a racer, so I may not make it down the first time, but I'll get there.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you're on. The name of the game is about your data and what you do about it.
Yeah.
So then, since we're kind of on the subject of the Cadillac a little bit and whatnot, has anybody guessed the actual weight of the turbo setup?
You know, I looked at that tonight. There's 754 comments on that thing. So I haven't even, I know what the turbo weighs. The turbo weighs about 98 pounds, but I have not weighed it with all the extra wastegates and everything on it. And so I'm going to weigh it, probably not tonight, it'll probably be tomorrow, and I'll put another video up, but I don't know what it weighs. A lot. It's heavy, I can tell you that much, but it'll be over 100 pounds.
Right. Now
well,
that's 140.
I like what Craig was kind of saying earlier
millimeter.
about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, 140.
140 millimeter. That's a huge. I mean, you used to probably throw in like a muskmelon or whatnot. Throw it in there and fit in there.
It's funny because you could just about stand up a Coke can or something in the inlet of that thing. It is that big.
Wow.
Start measuring those things in feet.
Yeah, it's
that's interesting though, because
5.5 inches, I think.
Wow, that's a monster.
But that no, kind of.
Yellowstone.
Oh, I got you. Craig and his Yellowstone beard. But you know, speaking of massive turbos and EFI troubles and you know, computer controlled and data, that evolution, you know, from where you came from in the you know, old days of big blocks moving up, you know, now everything's, you know, it's a data game. Where do you see kind of the sport going forward? What do you think, in your opinion, what do you think are going to be some of the big factors to pay attention to?
You know, it's funny because I went from my Chevy 2 from being acid aspirated to having a plate on it to putting an old 671 on it, to putting two plates on top of that to try and get it in the eights, then to putting a 1471 on it, you know, and the Lenco in it, all that stuff. Then got hooked up with Mike Moran and ran with him while he was trying to get in the fives. He got me convinced to switch the thing over to turbos. And his big deal was back then, you know, he said 10 years from now, turbos are going to be the, you know, power adder of choice. And they have been for quite a few years now, for probably, I don't know, close to the last 10 years. But now because of rules makers and or some of the other combinations really getting better, it's been more difficult. But what I think the biggest thing I've seen is the racetracks are better, the tires are better, the torque converters and transmissions are so much better. So everything is really came around. The EFI systems are better, so there's more control of things. I mean, I look back at when we were trying to get in the fives with Mike's car, and I've still got the original map that John Meany sent us for the big stuff where you could actually take out some timing and step it back in. But you had 3 opportunities, and the third one had to all be back in. So it was nothing, and it wasn't smooth. The boost controller, there was nobody out there made anything that was electronically controllable per se, that was smooth. So it's just crazy how things have evolved, and now you're seeing a lot of the centrifugal charger stuff really step up. That being said, the new Harts deal, I mean, I was the first one to jump on board with Harts and bring those guys into the gas side of everything with that big single charger. And now they released that new centrifugal blower at the PRI show. So we're going to see what that does. And I don't know. It's just evolution keeps going and going and going. It's kind of like saying, how fast could a top fuel car be if you could run an Outlaw top fuel car? I mean, it'd probably blow your mind if you would just hand somebody a car and a semi-load of parts and say, it's all yours, do whatever you want with it.
Hey, hang on, Craig. You're not up yet. Yours has disappeared again. I'm sending you a new link. Jump on that new link.
Let me cover.
Craig.
All right. Am I good now?
Give me a second. You just open the new one. I got to resize you for a second here. Sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty tonight.
I'll resize myself. Just tell me when.
Um,
All right. I'm going to go to the red one.
So, hey, Mr. Larson, have you,
Okay.
So we are kind of the Tri-5 mob. We're big in Tri-5s. Have you built any notable Tri-5s, or is that something you have some experience with?
I've really not done a lot with them. I've worked on a few, haven't built one per se to what we're used to building. I've got a customer, a good friend of mine up in Lincoln, Nebraska, that's got one that has I don't even know how big that thing is, 610, I think, in it with a 1471 on it and EFI on it. And that's how I got to know him, was nobody else could get that thing to run the way he thought it needed to run. So we did a bunch of work on it, and it's a fairly fast street car for what it is. But as far as us doing one complete turnkey, a Tri-5 deal, haven't done one yet. I've worked and changed and fixed and updated, but not done a complete one.
Well, speaking of kind of street car Tri-5s, what would you say, in your opinion, would be some of the big challenges with these cars for getting them kind of dialed in?
It depends on part of the thing. To me would be just like Chuck Parker's 55, trying to get a big tire under those cars. I mean, a 34.5 or a 36-inch tire creates a little bit of a challenge just because of the way that back window comes down back there. And I know Charles Carpenter, struggled a little bit with his trying to get some of that. So some of those cars, you can cheat the rear end forward a little bit when you open the wheel well, and any of that you can do gives you a little bit more clearance. But on those cars, probably that's a big thing. And then the few that I have done, put some cages in, trying to make the A-pillar where it comes through the dash, and the way that window wraps around, and not have it sticking out there staring at you. I mean, because here we go again. I'm all about hiding everything as much as I can. There's just not much way to hide one of those things. And I've seen some guys try to bend them behind the dash and go back forward and just do some hideous stuff.
It's hard. Those, with those welded in dashes, it does create a challenge right around that A-pillar area.
Yeah, I mean, but on our stuff, unless the guy just absolutely doesn't want to do it, we'll usually snatch the window out of it and run it through the dash and seal it all back up. I mean, it requires some paint and all that, but at the end of the day, you're going to do it once, and it's going to be good from then on out.
Absolutely. We've got a guy in the model I was mentioning earlier, Richard Owens, big fan. He says your caddy is the best kick-ass MFer on NPK. So I wanted to give you a shout out. And Richard is the guy who never watches our live show because he's always watching Street Outlaws. So we had to change to Tuesday nights because Monday nights wouldn't work for him. So I just want to give you a shout out first of all. And then we got a question here. Do you ever think that there will ever be turbos on top fuel dragsters or funny cars?
They're not even allowed. There was a funny car at that Funny Car Chaos or whatever they had last fall that had turbos on it. I think it was an alcohol ran on methanol deal. That's the only one I'm aware of. I don't know in a nitromethane application if the Charger, I don't know how the turbo would fare with the heat, even though those the turbine wheels are Inconel, just not really sure how they would fare. And there's so much exhaust energy on those things. I mean, once again, you got a semi-load of stuff laying there and everything else, but the rules, here we go again with top fuel and funny car right now, the rules mandate everything else out of it. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys remember, but the McGee twin overhead cam deal that somebody built in Australia probably 20 years ago, they built it for a fuel motor, and it got outlawed before anybody even ran
I don't remember that.
Okay.
But that's interesting.
Say when you we all have our jobs and our responsibilities, but do you still get excited when you're working on other people's dreams?
Yeah, I mean, it's the way we build them, they're never ever completely together as we go through the process of putting one together or building one. So you never ever see one completely together until it comes back from paint and we reassemble it. So that is, you work a lot of hours before you ever really see what you built. And so when you're done with it, it's cool to see it together, and then it's really cool to see, especially if it's some customer's dream car that he wanted to do. We did a 57 Buick for Doug Ray out in Kansas here, probably 2012, and that's what he'd always wanted, and we did that thing, and it turned out amazing. So he was just thrilled to death, and not hardly anybody's seen that car, unfortunately, but it is badass.
Very cool. Very cool.
So
now, I'm sorry. Well, now being on Street Outlaws, I don't want to get into who's worse. Who's personality wise, who's your most fun person that you get to race, or the biggest challenge? What do you want to say? You're like your adversary, your arch nemesis, somebody, but you enjoy a good personality, good car. Who do you enjoy running?
I enjoy the majority of those guys out there. I mean, there's a handful of them that I'm not in love with, but for the most part, most everybody's a good guy, and I enjoy racing all of them. And it really doesn't matter. I mean, and I'm sure they'll tell you the same thing, that you want to beat everybody that you go up against. I know when I ran Outlaw Armageddon back in, 17, 18, we ran 3 different races that weekend and won one, runner-up, and the other 2, I don't even remember now. But ran Chief, ran Sean, ran Will Hoyt, ran Ryan, ran everybody. And the only way I got beat was beating myself. And so that was a fun weekend just because I really hadn't ran with those guys and to know how we stacked up. And so to go out there and at that point in time to compete with them and outrun those guys was real rewarding. I'll put it that way.
Now they got going because of the social media following. Am I right? This is kind of how they all got started, because people started following them on the social media.
Well, they had the Midwest 405. It was Midwest Street Cars. Gosh, I couldn't even tell you how long ago. Way before Street Outlaws ever started, and their cars weren't that fast then. I can remember Chief and Sean coming to Drag Week in 2009, and they had just switched Sean's Nova over to a Pro Charger, and it had been a blown car. And I mean, there was video of that thing on the internet with that thing leaving with the front wheels, waist high in the air, out on the asphalt and everything else. But they had switched it to a Pro Charger, came to Drag Week, thought they were going to drive this thing, and we were all, the diehards of us were all just kind of chuckling to ourselves because the racing part's easy. The driving part on that thing is just devastating. And so they ran it, Muncie, Indiana, of all places, ran it off the end of the racetrack. There was a pretty good drop off at the turnoff down there. Ran it off the end of the racetrack, tore off a collector, threw the blower pulley off of it, and had a hurt piston like the night before or something like that out street racing. So they came limping back in there and like, man, this is harder than I thought. And I just looked at him and laughed. I said, you guys haven't even went out the gate yet. You have no idea. They loaded up going home. So that part of it, like I said, is comical because when I was racing the truck, once again, everybody gave me a hard time about the truck. I said, that thing's got more miles on it than everything else in the parking lot combined.
I can't fit in an S10, so I'm jealous.
How tall are you?
6'5".
No, you wouldn't fit.
No, trust. No, I'll tell you, I had an extended cab S10 at one time for about 6 months, and it was turning in. Well, even my son right now has a '99 Ford Ranger POS that I bought him. That's a special model, piece of shit, and I got to turn sideways. I got to get my foot up on the hump. I got to get my left foot under the clutch pedal, slide my rear end in. It's not fun, but no, it's dig it. I mean, when you were running that, and then like when Daddy Dave was running the, the Sonoma, I can't remember everything, but I just loved running the trucks. There's something, because I drove up my first 5 vehicles were all pickups. So it's always fun to see trucks doing well. Love that.
Yeah.
So is it
definitely.
a good is it a fun evolution to see these guys like Sean and and Big Chief to actually to elevate their game, at least to play with the big boys a little bit?
Yeah, I mean everybody. I mean, you just look at the first 4 seasons of No Prep Kings, let alone the Street Outlaws part of it. The 4 or 5 show. But you just look at No Prep Kings, what it has turned into. I mean. They wouldn't let me into the first 3 races of the first season. I finished 4th that season. And then second season, I finished 3rd. Had a chance to win it the final race and shot myself in the foot with Murillo. But now it has picked up so much performance-wise that it is just incredible how fast you have to go out there now. And yeah, we're at a racetrack. Not going to argue, but it's still you still have to tune this thing from from Friday night to Saturday night, basically, from day to night.
So
it's a lot of work, isn't it?
So touching
on
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Touching on the No Prep Kings. Kind of tell us what brought about the Street Outlaw edition on the S10.
So their rules stated, their rules stated it had to be within plus or minus 3 inches of factory wheelbase, and here we go. I built the truck for Drag Week. I didn't build it for anything else. So I purpose built it the way I wanted to build it for Drag Week, and really there was no rules for Drag Week, and still aren't. So I could do whatever wheelbase, whatever. I just wanted to do a steel roof and quarter car for Drag Week to kind of give a couple of those guys with fiberglass or carbon cars the big FU. That I could go faster than them with a something that still had something on it from the factory, right? Instead of being a pro mod car. So when I tried to get into No Prep Kings, they started giving me a bunch of BS. Oh, it's, the wheelbase doesn't match. And I said, well, it doesn't match being a short bed standard cab, but it's 2 inches shorter than a long bed standard cab. And they said, yeah, but it's not. I said, okay, well, a Pro Stock Firebird or Camaro of the middle 90s, like Finney used to race, like Birdman used to race, or Scott Taylor was racing, there were 3 or 4 of them out there. Those things were when they were built, and nobody realized it because they're not chassis builders, but most of those cars had their rear axle move forward 4 inches and then had the front axle move forward 6 inches. But we're so used to seeing them like that, they look factory, right? Until you pull up a stock car next to them, and then it's like, oh, hell no, it's not even close. So what I told them was, I said, okay, I'm 2 inches away from being a long bed. So if I make it look like a long bed, I said, it's going to look like shit. I said, it's going to look like an altered wheelbase 70s funny car. But I said, it's going to be just as legal as one of those other things. And couldn't get an answer. Finally, a week before Christmas that year, they called me and said, yeah, you make it look like a long bed, you can get in. So I went down to the pick and pull and took me a Sawzall and cut the back off the Sonoma, and I didn't even paint it. I made it mount where it bolted on and off for about 5 minutes, and
oh, nice.
And I thought there's no way they're going to let me run this, right? So I didn't paint it or anything. I took some silver duct tape and some gray duct tape and taped that thing up so that it actually matched pretty close. And
there's duct tape.
And took a can of Krylon and put the stripe on there. And from a distance, it didn't look too bad. But then everybody's like, oh, that thing's just duct tape. No, it was all steel underneath, but it was duct tape on the outside.
That's awesome.
That's okay. That S10 hurt feelings for years. I love that thing.
Yeah, I could do no wrong in that deal.
No, that's cool, man. That's cool. Do you still find when you get behind the wheel and the light, the flashlight or the lights, wherever you're running, do you still feel the adrenaline when you were 20?
Yeah, it's still the same. I mean, I joke with my customers, I'll get some guy, oh, I got a car just like that. Well, it's not quite like that, or I want this or I want that, but I can't afford it. I said, this is probably the most addictive sport that I can imagine. I said, because the only thing keeping any of us from having a top fuel car is our wallet. I said, if it wasn't for that, I said, we'd all have a top fuel car, because you guys know, I don't care if you're a daily driver, you get in that thing and go buy a new Hellcat and you get in it and scare the hell out of you the first couple of times you hit the throttle. And then after about the 10th or 12th time, you're like, all right, I need some more power.
Yeah,
so
more power.
It's just the constant, you get used to it and you want more.
Yeah, 12 PSI of boost gets old real quick.
Fast cars can drive slow, but slow cars can't drive fast. That's the addiction we all have. But Larry is, we're all car guys, and obviously mine's a cruiser, 355 small block with a little supercharger on it. Does fine. Daniel, he's done his racing, and Joe's building his car right now, which is going to scrape the dirt nice and low. I like that. But what, we have other things that we do also, and that's what makes us try to be personal. What else, trips your trigger? What do you like to do? Hunt and fish, and do you have other hobbies that you get away to do?
I joke with people too about that. It's like at a certain point in time, I get fed up with whether it be the race car thing or whatever, and I tell them, I need a weekend or whatever with no tires and wheels. And so I like to fish. Never got a really chance to do it when I was a kid because there was just no place to fish out there where there's no water. So I do enjoy that. Usually go on a hunting trip a year, go up to South Dakota and hunt pheasant, but that's really about it, honestly. I mean, the unfortunate part or fortunate part, either one, people always run home to jump in the garage, right, and work on their car. And they're like, aren't you excited to go home and work on your car? I'm like, yeah, but the more years I've done this and the older I get, I said, it'd be like you being a CPA during the day and then going home and crunching numbers at night. I said, you don't want to do that, right? I said, There's days I don't want to look at my car.
Right. That's why as a carpenter, none of my projects are done on my house. They're all half started because that's what I do all day long. I don't want to touch the saw at night. I get that.
Yeah, but you're,
But
So you're telling me I've got it perfect because I am in public accounting, so I crunch numbers all day, and then I get to go home. So I'm in the sweet spot. So
Yeah.
I know you couldn't tell, Joe, but I looked right at your point on the camera when you the minute I looked right at you.
Yeah, I'm a data guy. We can call it a data guy. But hey, that's a great point. And I wanted to kind of expand on that. You know, covering stuff outside of cars, but inside cars. Do you see yourself going in any maybe new motorsport directions or any areas that interest you, maybe outside of drag racing?
You know, probably not. I mean, I guess I've been here for so long, and you know, I probably at some point in time I'll probably go back and do Drag Week or Rocky Mountain Race Week or something again. Feel like I still need to prove a point one more time to a couple people, but other than that, like I said, I'm pretty satisfied with what we've done. I mean, every year you go out there and you want to win and you want to be on top of the mountain, and it's so hard to do, especially year in, year out. And so, but as far as doing anything else, don't know. Like I said, raced motocross, bought another bike when I was in my early 40s and raced for a while again. And but yeah, the street rod deal doesn't really trip my trigger. How's that sound? I mean, it's cool. I like it, but if I was going to do something weird and oddball, it'd probably be some old beater that was off the chain, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I can tell you, I got a fishing boat, Larry. I haven't been in much lately, but if you ever want to come up, you got our contact, and I got about 200 lakes within about an hour in Minnesota, for Christ's sakes, right? And if we don't catch fish, we'll catch a buzz.
Don't doubt that at all.
Right. Oh, too funny.
Yeah. So usually,
Daniel's thinking too hard tonight.
No, it's all good. Usually when we close these out, we like to run a couple common questions by everyone and kind of collect our own data on the scene. So one of the first ones I was going to ask is, what's your favorite power adder? If you had to pick one to rule them all.
I enjoy the turbocharged stuff just because it makes big power and the challenge of tuning one. Anything that's crank driven, whether it be a centrifugal or a roots car, is easier to tune. And right now they're with the rules package on almost everything. That's, you know, pretty much looks like to me where a guy needs to be. But honestly, I wish, like from a pro mod standpoint, let's just say, I wish they'd make everybody have 3 pedals again and get rid of some of the electronics. I think make it go back to where a guy had to drive them and the person had to tune them, because that's one thing that the torque converter / automatic transmission and the traction control has done is it's made everybody lazy, and or you don't have to be that guy to be able to tune a car. I mean, Quayne Stott was the same guy. He got so aggravated when they started letting everybody run converters and automatic shifters. He put rider on the driver's door instead of
I think driver. Tim McAmis had a funny video with like a remote controlled Pro Mod and stuff. And
because Tim's the same thing. Tim came through that age of the Pro Mods and the clutches and now you can take a guy that can drive a super gas car and drop in one of these things and just tell him to hang on and keep it straight, and
yeah,
you know, he might be good at it.
Doesn't even have to pull shoot anymore.
That's true.
But so I like that. You know, kind of getting back to the roots and driving these cars. When it comes to transmissions, I know you said you were kind of a fan of manuals and kind of your street cars and stuff. But if you had to pick one transmission to rule them all, what's your favorite transmission setup?
Well, if you're trying to be competitive and racing one, now with the gear ratio selection and the torque converter selection, you can't. I mean, it's just hard to rule out the automatic part of it. But to go back and I mean I've drove everything from a B Alder comp eliminator car with a 400-inch 10,000 RPM motor in it with a 5-speed in it, and 500-inch and 800-inch cars and blown Vermont stuff. So I've drove a little bit of everything, and anything that's got a clutch pedal in it, it's just way more fun than letting it go to the button. I can guarantee you that. And then that being said, anything that you got to row gears in is more fun too. So that's like my Chevy too. It would probably be faster with an automatic in it, but that thing is so much fun on the 2-step, popping and banging and rowing gears. It's just a hoot.
That's more fun in my mind. Driving a stick shift, between changing the gears and it's not just like, and my dad describes it best. It's like driving a taxi cab. You get in, you poke a button, you hold it, you put it on the 2-step, you let go of the button, and a lot of the cars, it shifts it for you. It's just the computer. But I understand that's how you get your consistency some. But Larry, you probably know as well as we do. It's to the point where a lot of the stick shift stuff, you actually get pretty consistent. I mean, there's times where you're days you're within a hundredth or two. Even days where you're within thousands. Running a stick shift, and everybody's like, "Oh, automatics are consistent," but we found that stick shift you can be fairly consistent with them. So
I've got
kind of in
a
that
friend
same
of mine
note.
that runs super gas out in the middle of Kansas, and he's won the division with a small block Lenco with a clutch in it, and he was just that thing runs super gas and he'll go 990 and 105 because of how he runs it, and he just destroys a lot of these guys with the clutch in it and how he does it, and there's no throttle stop on the car. It's just crazy. I laugh every time I watch him run that thing.
Sounds rowdy.
Now, I think if I remember right, I think that's who my dad was telling me about. He always runs them. He runs it flat out, and he gets somewhere around the 1,000-foot or whatever, and he just kind of lifts off of it a little bit, and it makes everybody else chase him, and then he just kind of dumps them right at the line, and he wins consistently at that way.
He's actually got. It's funny because he's got another shift light in the car, and when that thing, he's got it set to X RPM, and when it gets to X RPM, after he gets into high gear, once it gets to X RPM, he just lifts off the throttle and lets it coast through the lights. And so if he's a little fast, a little slow, he just changes the RPM when the shift light comes on and lets off a little sooner and a little later. And so, yeah, he leads, and that thing, he's rolling the gears and no throttle stop. So it's out and out and out and out. And then all of a sudden here the thing just shuts off. Like I said, it'll go 990 at about 105.
Wow.
And these guys are coming on and going 100, 170 or 80 mile an hour, and you can't judge that.
Right. Awesome.
Say, Larry, we got a question from Jed Gage, who's got a big blowing 57 here. What's your favorite motocross bike?
I was always a Honda guy. I raced 125 and 250 two-strokes. Like I said, back in the 80s. Never did race much four-stroke stuff. I mean, even when I bought another one back in 01 or 2, it was another 250 two-stroke deal. But I raced a little bit of the 450 stuff, and they were fun. They were definitely more old guy friendly. How's that sound?
Yeah, you can climb a tree with them too.
If they don't run over the top of you.
I started with a 110, and then I went to a 185S. I think is what the 3-wheeler was. That was I never had that. I never had the dirt bikes as a kid. I didn't. My first bike I had was a 79 Yamaha Enduro IT 250. I think I picked up for $150, and I laid it down on its side the first day with rash on my helmet. I'm like, yeah, I'll stick to just driving nice. I knew my limits right away.
I miss those two-strokes, man, where you could just do a top end in your garage in a couple hours, and now, with these four-strokes, they got pistons about that thick, and you'll flip them if you wear them out and stuff. But good times.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. Yeah, the Jed says his favorite was the CR 500. Ooh. I know nothing about that.
I rode a couple of those. Oh my God,
You're gonna need a sidecar for your balls on that one. That's a big bike.
The torque of those things was just crazy. I mean, they were fun to ride.
Now, were those a two-stroke or were they a four-stroke?
They were a two-stroke, but even back then, I mean, don't get me wrong.
Got a piston about like that.
They won't compete with the four-stroke stuff now, but back in the days of the two-stroke stuff, they were just unbelievable.
Legendary. And there's a company I think called Honda America that reframes 500 engines. Pretty cool stuff. But
are those one of the ones that would just about break your leg off when you went to go to kickstart them?
Yeah. If you caught it on a bad cycle, it would jump back at you.
That's only when you, Daniel. That's only when you weigh 125 pounds as a senior in high school.
Hey, now. I was 145, dripping wet.
Well, hey,
there you go.
I really like, kind of learning this stuff about you. I didn't know any of the motocross or kind of some of your cars that led up to some of your really fast cars and all that stuff. I've had a great time talking, but there is one question that we always like to pose before we kind of wrap things up, and it is Tri-5 related, but do you like Postcards or Hardtops?
I'm a hardtop guy.
Fucking.
I've just and there's nothing wrong with a Postcard. I just always like the hardtop cars. And then I've got a 67 RS convertible Camaro sitting that I've had since '82 that I've never finished, and so I'm kind of a convertible guy too.
Okay, that's fair.
Because your 66 Nova, you consider that's a hard top, right?
Right.
Basically no post on the door, right? And so when you look at that, Larry, I mean, obviously yours was a race car, but you can imagine on a Saturday night cruising from one end down to the other town, your arm just that post gets in the way for a big sexy arm on a beast.
Put a funny car cage in it and see what it does to it.
Right.
I mean,
no, I see right. I'm looking at it right now. I see right where your cage is at.
Yeah. So my Chevy 2, that's one thing I hated about it, because then I couldn't hang my arm out the window like the normal Saturday night cruise. So on a long drive down the highway, if you pull your arm clear back, you can actually get it out, kind of out and around, just to get some room in it. But
I don't think
right.
There's a way to not look cool in a 25.5 car though. Like I think I like you can sit all weird. It's still cool to me just to see it.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's funny.
Yeah.
What we got a late question from Andy Flatness. What size turbo is in your in the caddy?
Oh, it's a 140.
140, Andy. Pay attention next time.
Yeah,
Very
we touched that earlier.
Yeah, I mean I've ran everything from a 128 to a 140 in it. Yeah.
My son's whispering in my ear, what size turbo should he run with his 2.5 liter 300,000 mile Ranger?
Whatever will fit in a Chevrolet. How's that sound?
150 shot turbo.
Oh man, I tell him all the time. I said we'll go buy a Chinese turbo off of eBay for $250 used, and I said it's going to blow up on the first hit of the trigger because it's 300,000 miles on that little thing.
Hey, no, it's low compression now. It's going to be fine.
Yeah, you know what? It's probably about 7.8 to 1 compression. I did just do the thermostat on Friday night. That was my Friday evening because he came home from school. It's 20 below zero out on Friday. And he was like, Dad, I have no heat. I'm like, well, what do you expect? It's 20 below zero. But he literally had no heat. The thermostat, I pulled the thermostat out in 4 pieces. And so, believe it or not, it's such a rare or common motor. I had to go, I called around for about an hour to find a thermostat because it's whatever, it's 21 years old, whatever it is, it's a 99, 22 years old. And then I had to find the seal for the thermostat housing, but now it's got heat that'll peel the skin off you. So we're good to go.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hate to cut us all off short here, but I had a great night here, Larry. I really appreciate you joining us. Craig, I thank you for coming and helping. And Joe, I thank you for helping and filling in. And
the ice
Larry,
is gone. It's time's up. Ice is gone.
All right.
Here, you hold that out to the wife.
What? Yeah. Well, I finished hers. She brought me. I finished that one, and I'm on the next one, so we're good.
All right. Thank you, guys, and have a good night. And remember, saveourracecars.com. Check it out. Fill out all the information and send that Lotus to your local government, and let's get out there and save our race cars.
Larry, thanks for having fun with us, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Look forward to seeing you. Have a good day.
Very good. If you're ever at a racetrack, stop in.
We will.
Do.
All right, guys.
You don't know.
Check, Craig Westpenning, Joey Truelove, and a special thank you for our background designer, Chad Reynolds, and a special thank you as well for our production analyst, Joe Miller. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you next time.